I, 28F, never thought a single photo could destroy my entire world. When my husband Jake showed me his phone that Thursday evening, laughing about some ridiculous AI-generated image someone had sent him as a prank, I barely glanced at it at first. But then I saw it. Him, sitting in what looked like a hotel room, with another woman's arms wrapped around his shoulders from behind. Her face was partially visible, blonde hair cascading down, red lipstick stark against pale skin. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago, when he was supposedly at that work conference in Miami. "Can you believe how good these AI things are getting?" Jake said, still chuckling as he scrolled past it quickly. "Someone's trying to mess with me. Probably Dave from accounting, that joker." He shook his head, already moving to delete the photo. "Look at the lighting around my ear. Totally fake. And my wedding ring is on the wrong hand. These AI programs always mess up the small details." I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I forced myself to smile. "Wait, let me see it again," I said, keeping my voice light and curious. "These AI things fascinate me." Jake hesitated for just a second, and in that moment, I knew. That tiny pause, that flash of something in his eyes. But he handed the phone back, and I studied the image more carefully this time. "See? Right there." Jake pointed over my shoulder, his finger jabbing at the screen. "The shadow under my chin is all wrong. And look at how the woman's hand seems to blur into my shirt. Classic AI artifacts. Plus, why would someone even make this? It's obviously someone trying to start drama." He was talking faster now, his words tumbling over each other. "I mean, come on, Sarah. You know me. When would I even have time for something like this? I'm either at work or home with you and the kids." The kids were at my mother's house for the week, enjoying their spring break. The house felt too quiet without their constant chatter and footsteps on the stairs. I nodded slowly, still staring at the photo. Jake was right about one thing. The lighting was a bit strange. But something else caught my eye. In the background, barely visible on a nightstand, was a distinctive lamp. Art Deco background were heavy, hotel-style blackout curtains, but with an unusual trim along the edges. And Jake's watch, the one I'd given him for our 5th anniversary, was clearly visible on his wrist. Would an AI know to include that specific watch? Around 2 in the morning, I slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I pulled out my phone and started searching. First, I looked up Miami hotels, specifically ones that hosted conferences 3 weeks ago. There were dozens, but I methodically went through each one, looking at their room photos. Nothing matched. Then I remembered something. Jake's conference had been in Miami, but he'd mentioned possibly driving up to Fort Lauderdale one evening to meet with a potential client. I expanded my search. 40 minutes later, I found it. The Ocean View Boutique Hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Their premium suites had that exact lamp, that exact bedspread, those exact curtains. My hands were shaking as I screenshot everything, but I needed more. A hotel room wasn't proof of anything. Jake could claim the AI had pulled images from this hotel's website to create the fake. I needed to find the woman. I crept back to bed, my mind racing. In the photo, the woman's face had been partially visible. Blonde hair, definitely dyed because I could see darker roots. She had a small tattoo on her wrist, something that looked like a bird or maybe a butterfly. She wore a distinctive ring on her right hand, looked like vintage jewelry, possibly an emerald. These weren't details an AI would randomly generate. These were real, specific details that belonged to a real person. The next morning, Jake left for work early, kissing me goodbye like nothing had happened. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I got to work. I started with his social media, but he barely used it. His Instagram had maybe 20 followers, mostly family and a few work colleagues, but I knew he had LinkedIn for professional networking. I logged into my own account and started looking through his connections, focusing on anyone based in Florida or anyone who'd interacted with his posts in the last few months. 3 hours later, I found her. Monica Reeves, a marketing consultant based in Fort Lauderdale. Her profile photo showed a professional headshot, But when I clicked through to her Instagram, which was public, their business. Maybe it was innocent and someone took the photo out of context. I knew I was grasping at straws, but I needed to be absolutely certain before my world came crashing down. I dove deeper into Monica's social media. Her Facebook was mostly private, but she'd been tagged in public posts by friends. One friend had posted photos from a girls' night out 3 weeks ago, Thursday night. The same night Jake claimed to be at a conference dinner. But Monica wasn't in those photos. Her friend had commented, "Miss you, Mon. Hope Miami is treating you well." Monica had replied with a winking emoji and, "Having a blast. See you when I get back." She was in Miami the same time as Jake. My stomach churned. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, then sat on the cold tile floor trying to process what I'd discovered. When I felt steady enough, I went back to my laptop. I needed to build a timeline, needed to understand how long this had been going on. I went through Jake's credit card statements online. He was careful, I'd give him that. Most charges were legitimate business expenses. But there were patterns, charges at restaurants I didn't recognize, always during his business trips. A charge at a jewelry store in Fort Lauderdale 2 months ago for $300. He'd never given me jewelry recently. Hotel charges that were slightly higher than what his company usually reimbursed, like he'd upgraded his room or ordered room service for 2. Then I found something interesting in our phone bill. Jake had a second phone line on our account, one he'd said was for international business calls. But looking at the usage, there were hundreds of texts and hours of calls to one number, a Fort Lauderdale area code. I didn't need to guess whose number it was. I was building my case when I heard Jake's car in the driveway. It was barely noon. I slammed my laptop shut and shoved my notes under the couch cushions. He walked in looking agitated, his tie loosened, his hair slightly messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. "Hey, babe," he said, trying to sound casual. "Decided to work from home this afternoon." "That okay?" He was watching me carefully, and I realized with a chill that he was checking to see what I was doing. Did he know I was investigating? Had someone warned him? "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "I was just doing through my phone one night when he thought I was asleep." But I'd been smart. I'd created a separate email account, used incognito mode, deleted everything suspicious. I acted normal, chatted about the kids, made his favorite dinners, even initiated intimacy one night just to throw him off. Meanwhile, I was building my arsenal. I'd found Monica's work website, which listed her client testimonials. No mention of Jake's company, which meant their relationship probably wasn't professional. I'd tracked down the hotel reservation through a contact who worked in hospitality. The room was booked under Jake's name, but for 2 guests. I'd even found a valet receipt from that night, time-stamped at 2 a.m., from a bar known for being a romantic spot. But the real breakthrough came when I remembered something. Jake had a dash cam in his car, one of those fancy ones that recorded continuously and uploaded to the cloud. He'd installed it after someone hit his car in a parking lot last year. He'd given me the login information in case anything happened while I was driving his car. I wondered if he'd remembered it existed. Late one night, after Jake had taken a sleeping pill because he'd been having trouble sleeping, I logged into the dashcam account. I went back 3 weeks to his Miami trip. Most of it was boring highway driving, but then I found it. The night of the supposed conference dinner, his car had been parked outside the Ocean View Boutique Hotel from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. The camera had captured him and Monica walking to the car, laughing, her hanging on his arm. They kissed before getting in. A long, passionate kiss that made my blood boil. I downloaded everything. Every video file, every timestamp, every piece of evidence that my husband was a lying, cheating bastard. But I wasn't done. I wanted to know everything. How long had this been going on? Were there others? What else had he lied about? I hired a private investigator with cash I'd withdrawn slowly over 2 weeks, telling Jake I was buying a surprise for his upcoming birthday. The PI was a woman named Linda, recommended by a divorce lawyer I'd consulted secretly. Linda was thorough. Within a week, she had a full report. Jake and Monica had been seeing each other for 8 months. They'd met at a conference in Atlanta, started texting, and it had escalated from there. Somehow obtained. My marriage was a lie. The man I'd trusted with everything had betrayed me in every possible way. But I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to cry and beg and fall apart. I was going to destroy him. "What do you want to do with all this?" Linda asked, her voice gentle but professional. She'd probably seen this scenario 100 times. "I can recommend some excellent divorce attorneys." "Not yet," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to plan this carefully. He's not going to see it coming." I took all the evidence and went home, hiding it in a safety deposit box at a bank Jake didn't know about. Then I started planning my revenge. The first step was to protect myself and the kids. I opened my own bank account and started transferring small amounts from my personal checking. I documented everything in our house, every asset, every piece of property. I made copies of all important documents. I consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys to understand my rights and options. Florida was a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity could impact alimony and asset division, especially with the financial fraud. The second step was to gather allies. I reached out to my sister Emma, who'd never liked Jake. "I knew it," she said when I told her everything. "That man always seemed too smooth. What do you need me to do?" I told her to wait, that I'd need her soon. I also confided in my best friend Maria, who worked in PR and knew how to manage a narrative. She was horrified, but immediately started planning how to control the story when it broke. The third step was to learn more about Monica. She wasn't married, which was disappointing because I'd briefly entertained the idea of telling her spouse, but she had a serious boyfriend, according to her social media. A guy named Derek, who seemed completely oblivious to her extracurricular activities. She also had a reputation to protect. Her marketing firm specialized in family brands, companies that sold to parents and children. An affair with a married father of 2 wouldn't look good for her image. Jake, meanwhile, was getting increasingly paranoid. He'd started deleting texts immediately after reading them, clearing his browser history obsessively, even checking his car for tracking devices. But he didn't find the one I'd placed in the wheel well. A tiny... "You were asleep. Jake said he had another business trip coming up. It's important," he said, not meeting my eyes. "A big potential client in Orlando. I'll be gone 3 days." I nodded, playing the supportive wife, but I knew the truth. Monica had posted about a spa weekend she'd booked, location tag carefully hidden, but I recognized the resort from her photos. It was in Orlando. "That's fine," I said. "Actually, perfect timing. Mom wants me to help her plan Dad's retirement party. I can focus on that while you're gone." Jake looked relieved that I wasn't asking questions. He pulled me close, kissing my forehead. "You're the best, you know that? I'm so lucky to have you." I wanted to throw up. Instead, I smiled and kissed him back. "We're both lucky," I said, the words like acid in my mouth. That night, as Jake slept beside me, I finalized my plan. His Orlando trip would be his last as my husband. By the time he came back, everyone would know exactly who he really was. I spent the next week preparing. I created a presentation, like the kind I used to make when I worked in corporate before the kids were born. It contained everything. The photos, the dashcam footage, the bank records, the text transcripts. I organized it chronologically, showing the progression of the affair, the escalation of the lies, the depth of the betrayal. It was devastating in its thoroughness. I also prepared individual packages for key people. For Jake's boss, I included evidence that Jake had been using company funds for some of his trips with Monica, billing personal expenses as business costs. For Monica's clients, I prepared a dossier showing her involvement with a married man, complete with timestamps showing she'd been with Jake when she was supposedly at business meetings. For Derek, Monica's boyfriend, I compiled the most damning evidence of her infidelity. But the masterpiece was what I planned for Jake's family. His parents, who adored him and constantly praised what a good husband and father he was. His brother, who looked up to him. His sister, who'd been my friend before I even met Jake. They would all receive copies of everything, but I'd present it to them in person, at the family dinner planned for the Sunday Jake returned from Orlando. Jake left for his trip on a Thursday morning, kissed girlfriend he needed to see, and to check his email on Saturday evening. Friday was spent with the kids, taking them to the park, making their favorite meals, being fully present with them. They didn't know their world was about to change. That night, after they were asleep, I packaged everything up, printed copies, loaded USB drives, prepared emails to be sent on schedule. My sister Emma came over to help, and we worked until 3 in the morning, making sure everything was perfect. Saturday morning, I dropped the kids at my mother's again, telling her I had errands to run. Then I drove to Jake's parents' house. His mother, Linda, welcomed me warmly, asking about Jake's business trip. "Actually," I said, "I need to talk to you and Tom about something important. Can we sit down?" They looked concerned as we settled in their living room. I pulled out my laptop and began the presentation. At first, they were confused. Then Linda gasped when she saw the first photo of Jake and Monica. Tom's face went red when he saw the financial records. By the time I showed them the dashcam footage of Jake and Monica kissing, Linda was crying and Tom was pacing the room, furious. "That bastard," Tom muttered. "How could he do this to you? To the kids?" Linda was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "We raised him better than this." "I'm so sorry, Sarah. So sorry." They promised to be at the family dinner on Sunday, said they'd support whatever I decided to do. Tom even offered to pay for my divorce lawyer. Next, I went to Jake's sister's house. Megan's reaction was even more dramatic. She threw a vase across the room, screaming about what a hypocrite Jake was after he'd lectured her about her own relationship choices. She immediately called Jake's brother, putting him on speaker so I could tell him everything too. By the end of the day, Jake's entire family knew the truth and was firmly on my side. Saturday evening, the scheduled email went out to Derek. 20 minutes later, Monica posted a frantic message on Instagram, quickly deleted, but not before I screenshot it. "Someone is spreading lies about me. Don't believe anything you hear." Too late, Monica. Derek had already seen everything. Sunday morning, I woke up to multiple missed calls from Jake. "You've been having an affair for 8 months. You've stolen $15,000 from our family. You've lied to me every single day." Jake's face went from red to white. "How did you—" "Sarah, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. Monica means nothing to me. It was just a mistake, a stupid mistake. You're the one I love. You and the kids are my life." "Save it," I said. "Your family is expecting us for dinner in an hour. They already know everything, by the way. Your dad is particularly interested in discussing how you've been using his good name in the business community while acting like this." Jake staggered back like I'd slapped him. His father had connections everywhere. His disapproval could ruin Jake's career. "You told my parents?" Jake's voice was barely a whisper. "Sarah, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with Monica. I'll do anything. Please don't destroy our family." I laughed, actually laughed in his face. "You destroyed our family the first time you kissed her. I'm just cleaning up the mess." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "The dinner is at 6. Don't be late. Oh, and your boss wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning? Something about fraudulent expense reports." The family dinner was brutal. Jake walked in to find his parents, siblings, and their spouses all waiting. No one would look at him. His mother had clearly been crying. His father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might break a tooth. Megan spoke first. "How could you?" she said, her voice dripping with disgust. "Sarah is the best thing that ever happened to you, and you threw it away for what? Some blonde bimbo with a marketing degree?" Jake tried to defend himself, tried to minimize what he'd done, but I pulled out my laptop and showed everyone the full presentation. His brother Carl had to leave the room when he saw the financial records. "You stole from your children," Carl said when he came back. "What kind of father does that?" Jake's mother wouldn't stop crying. His father stood up, walked over to Jake, and said quietly, "You're no longer welcome in this house until you've made things right with Sarah and the children." and you're fired from the family business, effective immediately. Jake worked for his father. The prenup you forgot you signed. Your belongings are packed in the garage. Take them and go. Jake's face crumpled. The prenup had been his idea, back when he thought he was protecting his family's assets from me. He'd insisted on it, saying it was just good business. Now it would leave him with almost nothing, since the infidelity clause I'd insisted on adding nullified his claims to marital assets. Monday morning brought fresh hell for Jake. His boss fired him on the spot after seeing the evidence of expense fraud. Word spread quickly through our social circle. Monica's business was in ruins, with clients pulling out left and right. Derek had apparently caused quite a scene at the hotel, with police being called. Monica was now facing her own devastation, her carefully crafted image destroyed. I met with my lawyer that afternoon, filing for divorce and emergency custody. With all the evidence I'd compiled, he said it would be a slam dunk. Jake would be lucky to get supervised visitation and would definitely be paying substantial child support and alimony. The financial fraud alone would destroy him in court. By Wednesday, Jake was staying in a cheap motel, his credit cards maxed out from paying for lawyer fees. Monica had dumped him, according to mutual friends, saying he'd ruined her life. He'd tried to get a job at competing firms, but word had spread. Nobody wanted to hire someone who'd stolen from his family and committed expense fraud. His reputation was completely destroyed. The kids asked where Daddy was, and I told them he had to go away for work for a while. They'd learn the age-appropriate truth eventually, with the help of a child therapist I'd already contacted. But for now, they were adjusting to the new normal. My mother had moved in temporarily to help, and my sister came by daily. The support system I'd built was strong. 2 weeks after everything exploded, Jake showed up at the house, looking haggard and unkempt. I didn't open the door, just talked to him through the security system. "Please, Sarah," he begged. "I've lost everything. My job, my family. Monica won't even answer my calls. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you. I've always loved you. It was just a stupid mistake." 8 months isn't a mistake, Jake, I replied through the speaker. It's a choice. Hundreds of choices. Business, but the damage was done. She ended up moving to another state, starting over. Derek had made sure everyone in their social circle knew what she'd done. Last I heard, she was working as a freelance consultant, struggling to make ends meet. Jake had to move back in with his parents, who barely tolerated him. He got a job at a small firm 2 hours away, making a third of his previous salary. His weekends with the kids were supervised by a court-appointed monitor who reported that he spent most of the time crying and apologizing to them, which only confused and upset them more. 6 months after that photo appeared on Jake's phone, I stood in my kitchen, watching my kids play in the backyard. The divorce was final. The house was mine. The kids were adjusting well with the help of therapy. I'd started dating again, nothing serious, but it felt good to be wanted by someone who actually valued me. My sister Emma was over for dinner, helping me cook while telling me about her day. "You know what the best part is?" Emma said, chopping vegetables. "Everyone knows what he did. He can never pretend to be the good guy again. That image he worked so hard to maintain, it's gone forever." She was right. Jake had always been obsessed with his reputation, with being seen as the successful family man. Now everyone knew the truth. Every time he walked into a room, people whispered. Every new person he met would eventually Google him and find the news articles about his firing for fraud. I'd won. Completely and utterly. It wasn't just about the divorce settlement or keeping the house or getting custody. It was about making sure that Jake and Monica faced real consequences for their actions. They'd thought they were so smart, so careful. Jake had been so confident that I'd never find out, and even if I did, that I'd forgive him like a good little wife. He'd underestimated me completely. The kids came running inside, laughing about something they'd seen in the garden. Lily hugged my legs while Tyler showed me a bug he'd caught. This was my life now. Peaceful, honest, free from lies and betrayal. Jake had given me trust issues that would probably take years to fully overcome, but he'd also taught me my own strength. I'd investigated, documented, and executed a plan that had completely dismantled his life while protecting my children and myself. That night, I were safe and loved. My future was my own to shape. Jake and Monica were living with the consequences of their choices, their reputations destroyed, their careers in ruins, their relationship nothing but ashes. Some people might say I went too far, that I should have just divorced him quietly and moved on. But those people didn't understand what it felt like to be so thoroughly betrayed by someone you trusted with everything. They didn't understand the rage that comes from discovering that your entire life has been built on lies. Jake hadn't just cheated. He'd stolen from our children, lied to everyone we knew, and tried to gaslight me into believing I was crazy for suspecting him. Monica had known he was married, had seen pictures of our children on his phone, and hadn't cared. She'd actively participated in destroying a family for her own selfish desires. They both deserved everything that happened to them and more. The fact that they were both now facing professional ruin, social isolation, and financial hardship was simply justice. My lawyer called the next day with good news. Jake had missed his first child support payment, which meant we could garnish his wages directly. His new employer would be notified, adding another layer of humiliation to his situation. Additionally, Monica had tried to sue me for defamation, but her lawyer had dropped the case after seeing all the evidence. Truth, as it turns out, is an absolute defense against defamation claims. The kids started asking more questions about why Daddy didn't live with us anymore. With the therapist's guidance, I told them an age-appropriate version of the truth. Daddy had made some bad choices that hurt our family, and now he had to live somewhere else. But he still loved them, even if he couldn't be with them all the time. Lily seemed to understand more than Tyler, occasionally asking if Daddy had been mean to me. I always redirected, not wanting to poison them against their father more than necessary. Jake's supervised visits were painful for everyone. He'd show up looking disheveled, trying too hard to make the kids laugh, buying them too many presents with money he didn't have. The supervisor reported that he often broke down crying during the visits, which scared Tyler. After the third incident, the court reduced his visitation to once a month until he could demonstrate better emotional stability. His parents reached out occasionally, maintaining their relationship with the internet never forgets. Every time a potential client searched for her, they found the stories about her affair with a married man. Her Instagram, once filled with glamorous photos and professional achievements, had been made private after the constant harassment. Derek had made sure everyone in their industry knew exactly what kind of person she was. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd tried to contact Jake a few times, perhaps hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. But Jake was toxic now, professionally and socially. Being associated with him would only damage her further. They'd destroyed each other, in a way. Their affair had cost them everything they'd valued: careers, reputations, relationships, financial security. A year after the divorce, I was thriving. I'd started my own consulting business, using my old corporate connections. The flexible schedule allowed me to be present for the kids while earning more than enough to support us comfortably. I'd also started dating Marcus, a widower with a daughter Lily's age. He was everything Jake hadn't been: honest, present, and genuinely interested in building something real. Marcus knew the whole story, had actually Googled me before our first date and asked about it directly. I appreciated his honesty and the fact that he didn't judge me for how I'd handled things. "You protected your kids and yourself," he'd said simply. "That's what a good mother does." His daughter and my kids got along wonderfully, and for the first time in years, I could imagine a future that included love and trust again. Jake, meanwhile, had spiraled further. He'd been caught lying on a job application, claiming qualifications he didn't have, and had been fired again. His parents had finally kicked him out after he'd stolen money from his mother's purse. He was living in a studio apartment on the bad side of town, working minimum-wage jobs and drinking too much, according to the court-appointed supervisor. His visitation rights were in danger of being revoked entirely. The last time I saw him in person was at a custody hearing where he was trying to get unsupervised visitation. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his clothes were ill-fitting and wrinkled, and he had the shaky hands of someone drinking too much. When he tried to argue that he'd changed, that he deserved another chance, the judge reviewed his history. The affair, the financial fraud, the missed child support payments, the emotional instability during visit entirely, moving to California to try to start over. But the internet followed her there too. Someone had created a website dedicated to exposing cheaters, and she was featured prominently, complete with photos and the whole timeline of her affair with Jake. Every few months, someone would update it with her new location or job, making it impossible for her to fully escape her past. I sometimes wondered if I should feel guilty for being so thorough in my revenge. Should I have shown mercy? Should I have protected Jake for the sake of the children? But then I'd remember finding that photo. Remember him gaslighting me, telling me it was AI, making me doubt my own eyes. I'd remember the $15,000 he'd stolen from our children's future. I'd remember the 8 months of lies, the fake business trips, the nights he'd come home smelling like another woman's perfume and still had the audacity to kiss me goodnight. No, I didn't feel guilty. They'd made their choices with full knowledge of what they were risking. They'd gambled that I was too trusting, too naive, too weak to fight back. They'd lost that gamble spectacularly. Every consequence they faced was one they'd earned through their own actions. I'd simply made sure those consequences were fully realized. The kids were doing better now. Lily had stopped asking about Daddy as much, focusing on school and her dance classes. Tyler barely remembered when Jake had lived with us. They were happy, healthy, surrounded by people who actually loved them and put their needs first. My mother had said something that stuck with me. You didn't destroy their father. He destroyed himself. You just refused to let him take you and the children down with him. She was right. Jake had lit the match that burned down our marriage. I'd just made sure he was the only one who got burned. Monica had been collateral damage, but she'd chosen to involve herself with a married man. She'd known the risks. Neither of them had shown any consideration for me or my children when they were sneaking around, lying, stealing. Why should I have shown consideration for them when exposing the truth? 2 years after the divorce, I received an unexpected message. It was from Monica's ex-boyfriend, Derek. He wanted to thank me for revealing the truth. He'd been planning to propose to Monica, had already bought the ring. Finding out about her affair had saved him from making because he couldn't keep his pants zipped. The last update I got about him was from his former best friend, who'd run into him at a gas station. Jake had apparently begged for money, claiming he was homeless. He'd aged 20 years in the 2 years since our divorce. His friend had given him $20 and told him never to contact him again. It was pathetic, but it was also justice. He'd stolen $15,000 from his family. Now he was begging for $20 from strangers. I married Marcus 3 years after the divorce. The kids called him Dad, since Jake had lost all visitation rights after missing 6 months of child support and failing to complete court-ordered therapy. Our wedding was beautiful, surrounded by family and friends who'd supported me through the darkest time of my life. Jake's parents came, having maintained their relationship with their grandchildren throughout everything. Linda cried happy tears, telling me I looked radiant, that I deserved all the happiness in the world. We moved to a new house, a fresh start in a better school district. I'd sold the old house for a substantial profit, using the money to set up college funds for the kids and invest in my growing business. Life was good. Better than good. It was everything I'd thought I had with Jake, except this time it was real. Marcus was actually faithful, actually present, actually the man he presented himself to be. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that photo on Jake's phone. The one he'd sworn was AI, insisted was fake, tried to gaslight me into ignoring. That single image had been the thread that, when pulled, unraveled everything. If he'd just been honest when confronted, if he'd confessed and begged for forgiveness, maybe things would have been different. Maybe I would have tried counseling, tried to salvage our marriage for the kids' sake. But he'd lied. He'd looked me in the eye, knowing that photo was real, and tried to make me feel crazy for suspecting him. That's what sealed his fate. Not the affair itself, but the attempt to manipulate me, to use my trust against me. That's what had triggered my need for complete and total revenge, and I'd gotten it. Every bit of it. 5 years after the divorce, I ran into Monica at an airport. She looked older, tired, worn down. She saw me and froze, probably debating whether to run. And you didn't care. Jake didn't make you do anything. You made your choices. Now you live with them. I walked away without looking back, heading to my first-class seat for a vacation with Marcus and the kids. Jake had become a ghost, someone who existed only in court records and bad memories. The kids didn't ask about him anymore. They had Marcus, who'd legally adopted them after Jake had voluntarily surrendered his parental rights to avoid jail time for back child support. Tyler didn't remember Jake at all. Lily had vague memories but preferred not to think about them. Their lives were stable, happy, full of love and truth. At my 10-year high school reunion, several people asked about Jake, remembering us as the golden couple. I told them simply that we'd divorced due to his infidelity and left it at that. But they knew. Everyone knew. The story had been too dramatic, too public to forget. I was the woman who'd exposed her cheating husband in the most spectacular way possible. Some admired me for it. Others thought I'd gone too far. I didn't care either way. What mattered was that I'd protected my children and myself. I'd refused to be a victim, refused to quietly accept betrayal and lies. I'd fought back with everything I had, and I'd won. Jake and Monica had thought they were playing a game, sneaking around, having their secret affair. They hadn't realized I was playing too, and I was playing for keeps. The last I heard, Jake was living in another state, still struggling with alcoholism, still unable to hold down a decent job. His reputation followed him everywhere. Background checks revealed his firing for fraud. Google searches showed the articles about his spectacular downfall. He'd tried to change his name, but legal name changes are public record, and someone always figured it out. He was marked forever by his choices. Monica had similarly never recovered. She'd tried everything to rebuild her career, but the marketing world is small and people talk. She was working as a freelance writer, barely making ends meet, her dreams of running a successful firm dead and buried. She'd posted once on LinkedIn about learning from mistakes and growing as a person, but the comments had been brutal, reminding everyone of what she'd done. She'd deleted her profile entirely after that. Their affair had lasted 8 months. The consequences would last shown everyone else. The truth, as it turns out, was the most devastating weapon of all. The photo that Jake had insisted was AI had been real. Our marriage, our life together, his love for me and the children, that had been the real fake, the actual artificial creation. In exposing his lie about that photo, I'd exposed the lie of our entire relationship. And in destroying the facade he'd built, I'd freed myself to build something genuine. Marcus and I had 2 more children together, giving Lily and Tyler siblings they adored. Our life was chaotic and wonderful and real. There were no secrets, no lies, no photos to explain away. When Marcus traveled for business, he FaceTimed us every night. When he said he was at the gym, he was actually at the gym. It was so simple, yet Jake had made it seem impossible. On what would have been Jake and my 15th wedding anniversary, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. It was from Jake, handwritten, rambling, full of self-pity and blame. He accused me of ruining his life, of turning his family against him, of being vindictive and cruel. He said Monica had meant nothing, that I'd overreacted, that I'd destroyed their lives over a meaningless fling. The lack of accountability was stunning, but not surprising. I showed the letter to Marcus, who read it and shook his head. "He still doesn't get it," Marcus said. "He thinks this happened to him, not because of him." He was right. Jake would probably never understand that he'd authored his own destruction. He'd always see himself as the victim, never the villain. That was fine. His delusion was his burden to carry, not mine. I burned the letter in our fire pit that night, watching the pages curl and turn to ash. The kids were roasting marshmallows, laughing at something silly. Marcus had his arm around me, solid and warm and present. This was my life now. This was what I'd fought for, what I'd protected, what I'd won. The ashes of Jake's letter floated up into the night sky and disappeared. just like Jake himself had disappeared from our lives. Looking back, I sometimes marveled at how thoroughly I'd dismantled Jake and Monica's lives. Every avenue of escape had been cut off. Every attempt to rebuild had been thwarted by the truth following them like a shadow. Quietly. The answer was always no. Jake and Monica had conducted their affair in secret, hiding in shadows, lying to everyone. I'd dragged everything into the light, where everyone could see it. They'd chosen to play with fire. I'd simply made sure they got burned. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is actual revenge, followed by living well. I'd gotten both. Jake and Monica had gotten exactly what they deserved. Nothing. No sympathy, no second chances, no quiet recovery. They'd gambled with my life and lost everything. Meanwhile, I'd taken the ashes of my destroyed marriage and built something beautiful from them. As I tucked my children into bed that night, including the new baby Marcus and I had welcomed, I thought about how different life had become. Lily was thriving in school. Tyler was becoming quite the little athlete, and our toddler was just starting to walk. They were surrounded by love, stability, and truth. They'd never wonder if their parents were lying to them, never discover devastating secrets, never have their trust shattered by betrayal. That's what Jake had really stolen when he'd had that affair. Our children's right to an intact family, their innocence about their father, their trust in the world. He'd stolen it for momentary pleasure with a woman who meant nothing. That's why I'd been so thorough in my revenge, not just for me, but for them. He'd needed to pay for what he'd taken from those innocent children, and pay he had, in every possible way. Monica had been collateral damage, but necessary collateral damage. She'd known about the children, had seen their photos, heard their names, and hadn't cared. She'd been willing to destroy their family for her own selfish wants. She deserved everything that had happened to her. The loss of her business, her reputation, her relationship, her entire life as she'd known it. It was justice, pure and simple. 10 years after that photo appeared on Jake's phone, I could barely remember what it felt like to be married to him. He'd become a cautionary tale I'd tell friends who suspected their spouses of cheating. Document everything, protect yourself financially, and when you strike, make it count. Don't give them a chance to recover, to spin the narrative, to paint themselves as victims. Already preparing. That lie about AI had simply confirmed what I'd suspected and triggered the investigation that would destroy him. In the end, the real artificial intelligence had been Jake himself, programmed to lie, cheat, and steal while maintaining a facade of the perfect husband and father. But I'd found the bug in his code, the photo that revealed the truth, and I'd used it to crash his entire system. He'd never recover, never rebuild, never be able to pretend again. The man who'd insisted that damning photo was fake had been exposed as the real fake all along. As I closed my eyes that night, safe in bed next to a husband who actually loved me, in a house full of happy children, living a life built on truth instead of lies, I thought about that photo one last time. Such a small thing to have caused such massive destruction. But it hadn't really been about the photo. It had been about the lie, the betrayal, the utter disrespect of trying to gaslight me into ignoring evidence that was right in front of my face. Jake had thought I was stupid. Monica had thought I was weak. They'd both been catastrophically wrong, and they'd paid the price for their miscalculation every single day since. Meanwhile, I'd won everything. The house, the kids, the money, the family's support, and most importantly, the truth. The photo might not have been AI, but my revenge had been calculated with the precision of a computer and executed with the efficiency of a machine. They'd played their game of deception and lost. I'd played the long game of justice and won. And unlike Jake's claim about that photo being AI, my victory was absolutely, undeniably, gorgeously real.